I've seen people doing it DIY with the miners. Kind of once people figure it out, they can just do it themselves. I think the problem is the lack of availability of devices. 5 years ago, no one was doing this. 5 years ago, the only home mining, home heating and mining was done by people DIY. There was no company that would do like a professional product. So that's when we started with this. Since then, there's a few companies that popped up. But yeah, and we're a small company. We're like 30 people, but we brought the first properly produced, kind of industrially produced home heater miner to the world a few years ago. There was just no one else doing it. None of these devices were available. I don't really understand why this niche was still there. I would guess that there's like two sides, right? There's the companies that make Bitcoin miners, and then there's the companies that just make heaters. The companies that make heaters, they didn't really think that much about it. Like maybe they don't know much about Bitcoin. Maybe they making fairly complicated electric machines with the chips inside is a bit too complicated for them. But then on the other side, the companies that actually can make the Bitcoin miners, like the Bitmain, etc., they're too busy making industrial miners because, you sell that industrial miner for $2, $3, $5, $10, $20, whatever $1,000, and you make a big buck on sale of a single machine. And they can focus on that, and they're happily making money there. So why do anything else? So there's not that many devices that were available even just a few years ago, and these devices only really started popping up in the last couple of years. I think now it's going to be more and more of those, and you can see the trend that it kind of starts with the pretty expensive devices, and I think this is actually the biggest downside of our mining machines right now. When we sell our heater miners, they are over $1,000 a piece for the top machine, and then slightly cheaper machine would still be around $800 mark, which is still fairly expensive for a home heater. Not everyone would be able to afford it. Not everyone would be able to pay for that. But at the same time, when we look at the performance of our devices and we'll look at some of our early users, at first we thought, would these machines really pay for themselves? And then would it, just help with some electric power bill? But now we see that there's actually quite a few users because there are actually quite a few users who mined so much Bitcoin that it covered the cost of their machine several times. It's incredible. Like in hindsight, I understand that it actually makes sense, but now but we never really expected that it would happen so quickly. It's kind of amazing.
In what time frame is this, like from the early users that have the machine like for multiple years now, where they are like, or?
Yes. So what happened is these people would tend to live in colder areas, so they would use the machines quite a long time in the year. And that would be, I think, 2-3 years that they've used the machines by now. But at the same time, Bitcoin appreciated over this time. So whatever they mined, at the time that they mined it could be, let's say it was $10, and now it appreciated to, what would it be? 4 years ago, Bitcoin was like 5 times smaller, so now it would be $50, right? So these two effects combined meant that people who bought our machines, or some people who bought their machines from us a few years ago, already paid completely for those machines and kind of keep heating themselves and keep mining Bitcoin and getting additional rewards.
Is there a future where Bitcoin mining is just integrated in many different devices just to passively mine Bitcoin, and it's like a normal thing that houses have devices that just mine Bitcoin in the background just because it makes economic sense?
Absolutely. I think that's the It's the natural step for Bitcoin mining, and I think it's a natural step for a lot of devices as well. Because for the Bitcoin mining, this is the cheapest energy that you can get. As more and more of different kinds of machines are going to become available, I think it's going to be more and more widespread. And also on the user side and on the devices side, if you have a device that you can just use, if you can just use it in the same way and get some rewards on top of that, why not? Um, it all um, it all is limited only by the availability of the devices, by our speed and productivity in designing and then manufacturing these kind of devices. I think these are the biggest limits, but we'll do our best to bring more of these to the world.
I do love the watches from Coin Vigilante, but today I have a very special message, not from me, but from the CEO himself, Carlos from Coin Vigilante. Let's hear him.
To all the Robin's Here podcast community, I'm Carlos Estrada from Coin Vigilante, and we're sponsors of the show, and we're going to give you a very special discount exclusive to you, 10% off your order at coinvigilante.com when you use Robin at checkout. We have really nice watches that you guys can buy right now for 10%. This is a transparency edition, beautiful watch. These watches are worn in over 55 countries and counting. This discount is just for you, exclusive to the Robin's Here podcast. We have limited editions. We have limited productions. These watches come in very nice packaging, boxing material, and they are collector's item for Bitcoiners only. Enjoy the discount. Thanks for supporting the show and Coin Vigilante.
The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called micro-seed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With micro-seed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. You get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need. I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC free Bitcoin. That's why I use Simple Mining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control, and I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin, and let's mine Bitcoin together. So it's not just about heating devices. Is there any limitations of, like, you even said air conditioner, which it sounds not logic for me, because like an air conditioner wants to like have like cool air, and mining produces heat by that. How does this work for devices that don't produce heat. Like I think like most people get the value proposition of a miner runs and it produces heat, and you can use that to heat up your home. But how does it work if heat is not needed in the device?
Sure. Well, by the way, before air conditioners, just today I was talking to a friend, and he works on another hardware device, which is like a smoking device. You put whatever substance you want to smoke inside, and kind of heats inside. And I was saying, hey, what kind of temperature do you need? Like, do you want to heat it with a Bitcoin mining chip? And yeah, he kind of got interested. Let's see if we get one of those at some point.
Like a small solo miner to smoke from.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can essentially, it has a battery, right? You use that battery energy to heat up the tobacco, whatever that you smoke, and you smoke it. So you heat it up. It's a regular kind of coil inside that converts the energy contained in that battery into the heat that then kind of burns this tobacco, and then you smoke. So if you could do it with a Bitcoin mining chip, why not? I wouldn't say that there's like a huge economic benefit to it, because one Bitcoin mining chip is not going to produce that much, but why not? There's quite a few of the solo miners that managed to catch the block with a single chip machine, so it could be quite fun.
Maybe better to do it that way instead of playing the lottery.
I'm not sure if people would see it negatively, because it kind of promotes you to smoke more, but I think it's people's choices, right? Like we should stop encouraging people to do A or B and let them live their own lives. So yeah, and answering your question about the air conditioning, it is possible. Actually, it is possible to produce cold or coolness with heat. You have a process called absorption cooling, and you don't see it that often, but you might have seen it with fridges that are installed in hotel rooms. Have you ever noticed that those fridges are very often completely silent?
Oh yeah, like they usually don't make a. I actually never noticed that, because when I have guests over in the living room, there's always the fridge that I'm concerned about that is kind of loud. But in hotel rooms, actually, but they usually are smaller. Usually, like I only have those small ones. Are they differently cooled?
Yes. Well, there's different ones, but some of them are cooled in different ways. So the regular way that a fridge would work, it would use the compressor. And then that compressor on one hand, and then it would use the relationship between pressure and heat on the other. Kind of, you compress something, it kind of heats up, then this heated substance goes to the outdoors. So with air conditioner, that would be the unit that's outdoors. It's cooled down, so equalized with the outside temperature, and then it goes back up in. And then the temperature is decreased. And when the temperature decreases, it becomes colder. Right. So that's how the fridges work. That's how the air conditioners work. Now, there's a slightly different way is when you use a heat source and absorption cooling. It's kind of similar to how you use it with a compressor, but instead of using the compressor to increase the temperature and kind of move it outside and cool it down, you use a source of heat. And it's what often is used in fridges that are installed with hotels, because this process, unlike compressors, is nearly silent. It's less efficient from the energy and the physics standpoint, as in it uses more electricity to create a certain amount of coolness. But at the same time, it's silent, and that's why it's used with hotels. So same way Bitcoin mining could be used for that.
Interesting. So the heat can also be used just as basically as a power source, or almost in many different ways. It's interesting, and therefore there are no real limitations to where you can put Bitcoin miners in devices. There's you can literally then put it in everything.
Yes, the limitation is, like I said, it's the availability of the device. It's still a lot of work, right? to kind of rethink the device, to resolve all the barriers that you meet along the way, the supply chains, etc. It's a hard business. But once it's resolved and once it works and people start liking it, there's no stopping at this point.
Love it. It's so interesting. I think the Bitcoin mining space is one that will surprise a lot of people in the next 5 to 10 years, what's possible and how integrated it will be. Because most people, and we talked about that, most people talk about the implications of an economic system like Bitcoin. What can that do? Deflationary system. Where's Bitcoin going? How fast is Bitcoin growing? And all those kind of questions, I think, are very well discussed within Bitcoin and all the financial aspects of that. But there's a whole technical aspect of Bitcoin with Bitcoin mining and an energy aspect with Bitcoin mining that isn't that well known, discussed. And we also talked about before that Bitcoin mining, at least is my experience, that people don't click or watch those Bitcoin mining topics as much as they do certain other topics. And I think there's a whole host of possibilities in there that are super, super positive and good for the Bitcoin adoption overall. And one thing I just want to throw in there, I think it's from a political standpoint very hard to argue against Bitcoin mining when you see all the interesting applications for the energy market and how it can stabilize grids and how it can do great things for the energy market, which is kind of funny because like 2-3 years ago, the mainstream was like, oh yeah, like Bitcoin mining will destroy the planet. And now the argument shifts more and more of like, yeah, we need Bitcoin mining. Even if you hate Bitcoin mining still makes sense from an energy market perspective.
Oh, yes, because Bitcoin mining can always be a consumer of energy. And you even have cases with, do you know a company called Gridless?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so this is the case where, from the development standpoint, sometimes it makes no economic sense to build a power plant in a certain geography because there's not enough power consumption. And there could actually be not enough power consumption because, well, there's no power plants, there's no electricity, so people don't have electric devices. Right? So it's kind of like a chicken and egg problem. But then what you could do is you say, well, how about I build a power plant and I use most of this power at first, at least, for mining Bitcoin. Then you start having the electricity available and people can start buying more of the electric devices, and it really helps the development of a certain area. And Bitcoin mining is there to kind of kickstart the process. And then, if you start having a lot of people using the electricity naturally and kind of competing for that electricity, you can go to another geography and do the same thing with the same miners. I think it's a great application where Bitcoin mining really helps the development of some of the areas on the planet. I think I really like the case, and I really like what Greeless does. So that's one. But then there's actually an interesting approach to when you're going to start talking about Bitcoin and you start introducing people to Bitcoin. Most of the people get into Bitcoin with the idea of speculation, I believe, right? They're like, oh, I'm going to buy something, it's going to grow in price, and then I'm going to be rich, kind of ideas. And as history shows, then some people, will love it. Some people will hate it, depending on where the price goes. So when people are introduced to Bitcoin through the price, there's a pretty big churn, because sometimes Bitcoin price goes down and then people are unhappy and that turns into churn. But if you introduce Bitcoin to the people through home mining, when you're like, well, it's the heater, it's like a Dyson, works like a Dyson, uses the same amount of energy as a Dyson, doesn't make any more noise. It's like a Dyson, but it's going to make you some Bitcoin. It's always net positive. Like there's just, let's say Bitcoin price goes down, fine, you earn a little less in dollar terms, same and actually more in Bitcoin terms. Bitcoin price goes up, you're even more happy, but it's always net positive. And I think the home mining could be a much better way to introduce people to Bitcoin rather than just the price and the speculation.
It's a good point because it's you only win. Especially once the device kind of paid for itself, and you also have to remember a normal heater without Bitcoin miner also costs something.
Yeah, exactly. That was my question. Like, how long does it take for a Dyson to pay for itself? Maybe a few hundred years, maybe more.
It probably never pays for itself.
Exactly.
How actually I've never bought a space heater. It was always in the apartment somehow integrated. How expensive are those, and are the ones with Bitcoin mining actually so much cheaper that people are turned off by higher prices of the heaters with Bitcoin mining?
We tend to price our devices somewhere closer to the premium heaters. So Dyson would be a good example. We tend to price them around the Dyson price, maybe slightly higher. And I think that's a major limiting factor because not everyone buys a Dyson, right? They're still fairly expensive. They're still like I mentioned, like around $1,000 a piece. So we have models from like $800 to $1,300. But these are premium devices, right? They're built as premium devices because they're kind of, they need to compete with Dyson. And I really hope that we'll soon be able to introduce the much more of the mass market models. So if you're thinking of buying a Dyson, buying a Heatbit could be an easy choice. But I want to make sure that if you're thinking of buying a cheap heater, buying a cheap version of a heater that does the mining could be an easy choice as well, because that's could really increase the volumes. And this balance you're asking me about, how much of mining is done at home with home miners that is combined with heating, etc. And I'm saying it's very small. I think the devices within the mass market, that's what's going to start changing the balance. That's when more and more of those terahashes or exahashes at that time are going to start coming from essentially home miners that combine it with heating, who don't even care about the price of Bitcoin. So, and that's going to be the most resilient mining. That's when or if things go really badly in terms of price, and every once in a while it tends to happen. They're not going to turn off the devices, and Bitcoin network will keep running on those devices as nothing.
One question that probably everyone that considers such a device will ask is like, oh, how many Bitcoin can I make with home miner? And is there some estimates of like, depending on how big the device is, obviously it depends also on the mining market, and kind of estimations of like how much you actually can make and how fast you can kind of get the cost of the device itself again in there?
Sure. So let me just talk about our current model, maybe. So the current model that we just introduced to the market a few months ago, it's called Heatbit Maxi. We retail it at $1,300, and it's about 40 terahashes, close to 40 terahashes. Now, 40 terahashes makes you just over $60 a month. So, 1,300 divided by 60, that's 22 months of the device working. Now, how many years of work that is, it depends on you, like, and, how much far north do you live, etc. How much heat do you need? But at the same time, you still get a premium. Have you seen this, huh? You still get a good premium looking device with like a leather strap and all that stuff. So, if you consider that a Dyson costs, let's say a similar Dyson, which by the way is made of plastic, Dyson costs $800, then you're overpaying, or over a Dyson, you're overpaying 500. Now, if you divide 500 by the $60 that you're making with mining, that is, about 8.5 months. That's less than two seasons. And that doesn't take into account the tendency of Bitcoin price to go up. Like I mentioned, like we don't look at it daily, but once we looked at like, hey, do we have users who already completely paid for their devices? And yeah, there's quite a few. They completely paid for their devices with Bitcoin mining. I think that's, it's just history is kind of telling.
Which is amazing as an argument, especially like if it has, I think, the potential as a product to go. I don't like the word, but I think it's the best word, kind of viral, because people buy it, it heats the home, and they're like, after a year, like, or after 1-2 years, depending on the season and how how cold of an area you live in, they're like, hey, I got now more money out of that thing. So that thing now starts paying my electricity bill. So now all of a sudden, I get almost free electricity, or my electricity bill gets reduced in a sense. Those are the news that tend to travel fast with neighbors and with colleagues and with families. We're like, hey, like I have that space heater, like it paid for itself after 2 seasons, and now it reduces my electric bill.
Now imagine this heater start catching solar blocks, and then there's someone out there who so it doesn't just pay for electricity; it paid for a Lambo.
But can users decide themselves on like where to connect to like different pools and the payout scheme and all of that?
Yeah, exactly. We in our first models, we only had one pool connected. But that was not out of the intention. That was just a development limitation, right? We wanted to have a very smooth experience for people to start with. And it took us a bit of time to integrate all the other features so that people could just choose their own pool and do solo mining, etc. So that's already available on our devices. And then on the common devices, no, it's going to be not even just pool or solo. People could be able to do both. So you could kind of send part of the hash rate to solo mining with this kind of lottery ticket kind of thing, and part of the hash rate you could send to a pool to have a more regular, small but regular payouts.
That's super interesting. I think one thing that I want to touch on before we come to the end of the podcast is the implications that money and energy somehow is connected now. We talked about that before, where you have the fiat currencies, you have the current monetary network, which is the best connected maybe to a military act of the state, is also somehow connected to energy, I guess, in a very indirect way. But now we have money and energy directly connected, and there's a market there. Are there what are the biggest implications of that you are looking at?
Thinking. Interestingly, I think there is something in here around spreading the wealth equitably around the world. So if with the fiat currency, the backing of that fiat currency, that's people with guns. That is pretty concentrated around just a few countries. There's only a few countries that have nuclear weapons, for example. But in terms of energy, because electricity is so prevalent in our society, it's essential for our society operation, for the last 50 to 100 years. Electricity is almost everywhere. And if availability of electricity would mean that you have this better form of money available and you have kind of more influence over it, that in some way distributes the benefits around the world much better. I think that could be the implication, the connection.
This is super interesting. I think this is it's also super fun to talk about this energy rabbit hole, because I have not a lot of clue about energy, but I got a lot more clue about energy just because talking to Bitcoiners, and that's just I love that there are so many adjacent topics in Bitcoin that have traditionally no connection to money or finance. Like if you listen to, I don't know, stock podcast or a real estate podcast, it's a very different feeling to a Bitcoin podcast where we talk about energy, about parenting, about low tide dolphins life, and all those different topics. So I do love that. And on that note, we have one question to ask each and every one of my guests, and the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
Maybe just something about entrepreneurship and starting things, especially with hardware. Like if you want a short piece of advice, start your own business only if you don't mind pain. Who was it? I think it was Elon Musk. Who was like, oh, who said, how is it for you to run a startup? And he was like, it's like chewing glass. And very often, I think it's true. So you should have enough drive to kind of chew glass sometimes, and enable your team to kind of do the same along with you. And then if you're thinking of doing something in the hardware area, let me tell you that don't call it hardware for nothing. Each time I have to go to, let's say, some event, and I need to bring one of our devices to an event. I envy all the software people when I carry it and put it on the plane and carry it, and it's kind of heavy. So they don't call it hardware for nothing.
I just got I co-founded this thing, this microseed thing, this self custody device. And I was before completely in the digital world, and I loved it. You like the only real limiting factor then is service and marketing. But all of a sudden, like you have to pre-order stuff, you have to ship it, you have to manage the supply chain. Then all of a sudden, like one part gets like twice as expensive because did something happen? Then you're like, okay, can we manufacture it ourselves? Like all of these weird questions that I haven't even thought about 2 months ago. Now I'm in this startup since about 2 months, and it's going really good. But it is, I full-heartedly agree and understand what you're saying, but I only understand it since 2 months. So I'm looking forward to what I will learn on the hardware, and our thing is way more light and smaller. So like it's just like a small box and some metal.
Hardware wallet, right?
It's a backup device for backing up your seed phrase. So like just very short. You have that thing, and then you can stamp your seed phrase on a washer. And so we have some punches, the jig, and some titanium blades, like some titanium washer. So it's very lightweight. It's still metal, like it's not completely lightweight, but compared to a heater, I guess it's still easy to do fulfillment centers, and the cost is less than that.
Yeah. You know the pain.
I'm starting to know the pain. I'm at the very beginning of chewing glass.
Okay, yeah. Sometimes there's customs as well,
This is the big thing that we're currently. I mean, I don't want to make the podcast about that now, but we're currently looking at EU fulfillment, because if you buy it in the EU, all of a sudden it adds like a 50 or 60 euro cost just because of import taxes and customs and all of that. But I can feel your pain a little bit more than I could have felt it 2 months ago.
Well,
But yeah, really cool. Thank you so much. We have an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question, how can the benefits arising from Bitcoin adoption at the individual level help communities and regions become stronger and more resilient?
Could you repeat the question? It's kind of long.
It's kind of very long, yeah. I will summarize it, because as I read it out loud, I was like, I did not understand it. But it's basically the impacts of Bitcoin outside of the monetary thing. So what are the benefits, the positive advantages that Bitcoin will bring to communities and regions to make it stronger? I guess gridless is a really good example.
I think uniting people and unifying people around common topic or common causes is another thing.
Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast. And if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.